Okay, I got the signal from our engineer over here saying that we are on. We are live on KZMU. Thank you everyone for being here. Welcome to the 2022 candidate debates with those running for Grand County Commission and State House District 69. I'm Molly Marcello with KZMU. I'll be moderating this evening. This program was put together by KZMU and the Southeast Utah League of Women Voters. Again, we're broadcasting live on the airwaves from the Moab Arts and Recreation Center. We thank the folks at the Mark for making this possible. Audio from this event will be available on KZMU's website and podcasts later this week. We also expect the Southeast Utah League of Women Voters to have video on their website. So we're going to start off with a few words with the Southeast Utah League of Women Voters. Carrie Dabney, come on up.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you, KZMU, for all your hard work in putting this on. It's the second of two forums, and people have worked very, very hard. So I want to thank them for that. The League of Women Voters of Southeast Utah is a newly restructured local league with a focus on Grand and surrounding counties. So we've expanded our area of interest because it's real obvious that politics is no longer just local. It's statewide and it's national. So we're trying to address that. We provide nonpartisan assistance with voter registration, community engagement, civic education, candidate forums, and town halls. On the back of the room, there's a table that you'll find voter information, including sample ballots, key dates to remember, and some district maps because we have redistricted. So if you're in District 4 or 5, there's some maps back there. The postcard on your chair has a website for Vote 411, and that's the League's national website, but it's in every single state. And you can check there to see if you're registered. You can check there to register to vote, and also to find information on the candidates that are going to appear on the ballots on November 8th. The League sends out questions, and most of the folks have responded, and so you can go there and read about the different candidates at the local and state level. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Southeast Utah, I'd also like to thank the candidates running for the 3 commission positions in Grand County, and those candidates running for the Utah State House of Representatives in District 69, along with the audience here at the Mark and the audience watching and listening virtually. Democracy is not a spectator sport. It takes all of us working together to make democracy work. So I want to thank everyone who's worked hard to put this together, and those of you that have attended and those of you that are listening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie. Listeners, we are starting off with candidates running for County Commission in District 5. That's Steve Getz and Mike McCurdy. District 5 encompasses Spanish Valley west of Pack Creek. There's a much better description than I can provide of District 5, and that is on a map. So you can check your address at grandcountyutah.net. Steve and Mike, thank you both for being here. We're going to start off with introductions. Candidates, you have 1 minute to introduce yourselves in any way you'd like. We'll start alphabetically by last name. So candidate Getz, you are up first.
Thanks for having us. This is one of candidates' favorite things. Can we agree on it? So anyway, I'm Steve Getz, running for commissioner. The reason I'm here today is because of water. When I read those reports a couple of years ago, I just felt like I had to step up. My water education began at the dinner table, and my grandpa and my dad talked about water science. My grandfather had gotten involved early when in the 1930s, he and the other ranchers realized their wells were changing. So they worked with the USGS to set up a well monitoring program. So as kids, sat around the table and we learned the language of water. That's all I got, so.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. If that's it, that's fine. Mike.
Hello this evening. My name is Mike McCurdy. I was born and raised in Grand County, along with my wife, Ronnie McCurdy, and our 5 children. Growing up and raising our children has been our life's focus. As we call this, our home. I am running for County Commission District 5, like stated. I want to address the concerns of our citizens and shift our political focus to basic shelter needs, realistic water use, and bringing sustainable economy together with accessible government. Our community needs helpful and clear policies to sustainably prosper. That's it.
Okay, all right. Thank you both candidates. We're going to move on to questions. Our questions tonight have been sourced from our nonprofit partners and the community. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. Our amazing timekeepers, Alice and Jean, thank you so much. They will be holding up cards when candidates have 30 seconds and 10 seconds remaining. Finally, when candidates have reached their time, our timekeepers will ring a bell. There you go, thank you. At that point, candidates can finish their sentence but shouldn't start a new one. Each candidate will have the opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal if they ask for one, and the moderator, that's me, might pose a follow-up. In that case, candidates will have 1 minute to provide an answer to the follow-up. We will ask our small live audience to keep a respectful silence after each candidate speaks, reserving applause until the end of the event. As a reminder, we are here to participate in an important exercise in democracy, and we do aim to treat everyone in this space with fairness and equity. And also, candidates, if you need me to repeat any question, please tell me. Candidates will answer questions in rotating order. This question goes to Mike first. It's about water. The Grand County Commission is not a water service provider, but the county's elected officials can play a role in our water resources. New growth in the valley will be happening in Grand County. If elected, you could be helping create a water source protection plan, organizing new monitoring wells, making land use planning decisions based on new water studies. What is your strategy when it comes to water in Grand County? If elected, what water-wise planning initiatives would you like to move forward?
Thank you for that question. Both the infrastructure and water are controlled and operated by Grand County Water and Sewer. Grand Water and Sewer Service District is the board. The county has considerable control of water through what they allow to be built, where to be built, and what to be built. There has to be a huge collaboration between both county commission and Grand Water and Sewer going forward. There has to be work between us because they are the facts, they are the amount of water that we have. I would work diligently to assure that the system continues to work in that collaboration, and I would assure that we can still do what works for Grand County together. That's my stance on water.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Steve, same question.
So the first thing we have to do is realize that this entire valley is in one water system. And it really doesn't make any sense to have 5 or 6 different entities trying to make a water management plan. We need one group that creates a water management plan for the entire valley. And in the management group, they should not only deal with the delivery of water, but things like a unified conservation plan for the entire valley. And also, it'd be nice if we had a flood control plan for the entire valley. So that would be the first step. The second step is, with our aquifers, they're like bank accounts. And we're all withdrawing from them now, but nobody's monitoring the balance. There's a little bit of action that started in Grand County, but I think that that's the most important first step that we can get, is start a monitoring program and a database to keep track of that. So as our balance changes, we can figure out where we're at in those aquifers.
Okay. Mike, do you want to have 30 seconds to add anything else?
I feel that the studies have been done and we need to put these plans into action. The USGS is one of our leading studies that are one of the groups that have done the studies for us already. We need to put these plans into action. We can't further hope for more studies to do it later. A sense of poignance.
Thank you. Steve, 30 seconds.
So with the monitoring plan, you need to keep track of not only your aquifers, but I would push to monitor our springs around the valley, because those are like the canaries in the mine. If the springs start changing, that's going to give you indications of what's going on with our aquifers also. So we need to make sure we got a good historical record on where they're at now, so we can see changes as it happens in the future.
Thanks to you both. This next question, this goes to Steve first. It's about the budget. One of the primary responsibilities of the County Commission is to pass a balanced budget. It's also where our local government lays out their priorities. What are your priorities with the county budget and where we spend our money? And if there are any line items in any of the county's recent budgets that you would have changed, please tell us how you would balance the budget after making those changes.
So balance the budget in 2 minutes? That's an interesting proposal. So I have a couple thoughts. There's been a lot of grumbling lately about the cash reserve that the counties carry. But this is only smart. Smart businesses realize you have to have cash to carry you through the winter. And if next year isn't quite as good as has been in the past, then we need cash to carry us through that too. So I agree with what they're doing on the cash. I do have an area of concern with staffing. In my business, payroll was a big deal. It was our biggest single variable expense. And so as we looked at possibly adding staff or starting a new program, we wanted to make sure that that program or that staff member would add enough value to pay them. And so I think I would do like I did in the business. I'd look at 5-year averages, see if anything is bumping up, and take a closer look at that area. As far as balancing the budget, I believe the county's required to have a balanced budget. So, take it away.
Okay, Mike, same question. Let me know if you need me to repeat anything.
Will you repeat one more time?
Sure. What are your priorities with the county budget and where we spend our money? If there are any line items in the county's recent budgets that you would have changed, please tell us how you would balance the budget after making those changes.
Just so everyone knows, setting a budget doesn't save anyone money. I would like to say that as citizens, we need to be able to account for our county's expenditures in a manner that is easily accessible to our citizens. I'm taxed, you're taxed, our visitors are taxed. I would like to say I know how to fix and balance a budget right now, but I don't. For every possible way to see that more dollars are kept with our citizens and in our pockets is the way we need to look. And that's what I want.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Steve, do you want to take 30 seconds?
We're good.
Okay, all right, let's move on. This next question is related to housing, of course. Grand County has made progress on workforce and affordable housing. Mike, this question is going to you first. However, throughout the campaign season, we have heard candidates say there are still barriers to creating housing options for locals in the county. Do you see any of these barriers? What are the solutions you would work on if elected?
I actually see too many barriers. Local policies are both time-consuming and expensive before construction can even start. I would like to streamline the process by lowering costs where able and expediting the approval process to follow the builders and owners' ongoing costs. I know these areas that I will be able to work well with due to personally being heavily affected by the housing. I was speaking with the current commissioner already on the subject. And it was said, would you want all 300 homes that are in the foreseeable pipeline to be on the market at once? And it didn't take much thought. It only took a couple minutes for me to decide, yes, I want those 300 homes. I want them now. It would lower the price tag on current real estate in Moab, make it more attainable for our citizens. I want the ability to get the people that have a need currently into homes in a timely manner. We're doing things slowly, and I would like to look at doing them a little more expedited to get people into homes.
Thank you, Mike. Steve, same question?
Would you repeat it, please?
Sure. Grant County has made progress on workforce and affordable housing, but throughout the campaign season, we have heard candidates say there are still barriers to creating housing options for locals in the county. Do you see any of these barriers, and what are the solutions you would work on if elected?
So one area I've seen in the last few months, watching the new regulations being written and the new land use codes being written, is that it seems like if you want affordable housing, that should be your goal. And you shouldn't be adding on things that are kind of trendy ideas, like sun orientation and even have to have solar requirements, because these add costs. They add costs at the permitting level when the builder comes in with a plot, and you have to go through additional details. Are all the houses pointed the right way? Do all the houses have wiring or solar? Especially with manufactured type housing. If you order a tiny house to be delivered, you have to specify what type of wiring you want, or else you're tearing out walls and rebuilding them to put in the wiring for solar. So I think if we're looking for affordable housing, we should be very, very clear on what we want and realize there's ideas that are going to add to permitting time, costs, and possibly manufactured housing have to be rebuilt. So I think we need to be just concentrated on our goal. We need to go with that way.
Great, thank you. Mike, do you want 30 seconds?
Please. Wanted to speak to that added cost. That cost gets put on the builder and the owner. They in turn will put it on to renters. This doesn't affect just our homeowners directly. It affects our local renting market. It affects our local ability to get that landing pad that was previously stated. The costs get put down the line. And if we can alleviate those costs out the gate, that's where I'd like to go.
30 seconds, Steve?
I'm good.
Okay, I do have one follow-up for both of you. This is a 1-minute follow-up. I'm hoping to get your opinions on camp parks for locals and other alternative housing. Let's see, I believe Steve, you would be first. 1 minute.
So from what I've seen written, and I haven't seen the final draft yet, but it seems a little confusing to me. If you want to set up a land use plan, and that's what we've been working on for a while, why would you change or just allow anybody to change the zoning on their parcel, disregarding the node method that's being planned now? It seems to me that nodes, where you concentrate your with designed standards, why would you give that all up to let people put 4 RVs in? And it just it seems like it's not thought through yet.
Okay. Mike, same question? Your opinions on camp parks for locals and other alternative housing?
Where I do see that being a temporary fix for our current in need of and even to the point of homes. I see that being a quick fix, but not a long-term solution. Planning and zoning needs to put the policies in place for us to further expansion out into the valley. We need to get this forward, both forward and on, we need to get on board with it quickly. Time both costs money and people still need houses now. Hence the sense of urgency.
Thank you, too. We're going to move on to our next question. This is related to tourism and the economy. Mike, you're up again first. This was a big topic at the Chamber debate held earlier this month. I think it's safe to say that there's a certain anxiety among the business community that our tourism economy is not being prioritized at the county level. Do you agree? What should be prioritized when it comes to our local economy? And what current or future strategies related to economic development would you support if elected?
Immediately, we need to work to stabilize and make sustainable our current economic engine, which is tourism. No one is able to make clear and precise decisions without being able to put food on the table and a roof over the people's heads. It is not a secret that our major source of income is our guests. We need to manage this resource sustainably. At which point after being able to get to that fabled, we have breathing room, I would like to look far more into diversification within our economy in Moab and the surrounding area in our Grand County area. And that goes for even diversification within our current tourism industry. We need to make it more sustainable year-round. Everyone knows our economy shuts down in a few short months. We need to be sustainable throughout the year, not just during the summertime.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Steve, same question?
Could you repeat?
Yes, of course. There's a certain anxiety among the business community that our tourism economy is not being prioritized at the county level. Do you agree? What should be prioritized when it comes to our local economy? And what current or future strategies related to economic development would you support if elected?
So I think you're talking about the spending of the TRT funds for advertising. So there was a little bit of a lull in that, and then when the slowdown happened, people were upset because there was money in cash reserves for that. So advertising, I believe, has to be carried on in a systematic method and a consistent method, and I think we should continue that to make sure our tourism businesses are promoted, not just around Utah, but around the world. As far as diversification, when a business wants to start a new area, a new program, you have to take some of your money that you're making now and invest it in the new program. That's the only way you're going to diversify your business. And it'd be the same with the county. We do need to set aside money and look at different types of economies that will balance out the annual cycles that we have. And once we get a few little fledgling businesses started that are non-tourist related, our economy will start to level out year-round. So we won't have these highs and lows. And then we will not also be so tied to the tourist business. So if it does have a bad year, the whole valley doesn't have a bad year. That the other types of businesses would be sustaining us through these downturns.
Thank you. Mike, do you want to take 30 seconds?
A few seconds.
Okay.
As my opponent says, you have to take your set-aside money to hope to diversify your own business. Yes, but right now, this year, we are not able to have a set-aside. As our county officials have already stated, we're $800,000 behind in intake revenue. We need to get to a point with our, with our current economic engine where we can look at that.
Steve, for a second.
I'm good.
Okay, I do have a 1-minute follow-up, timekeepers. I just wanted to drill down if there were any specific current strategies related to economic development that either of you support. I'm sorry, Steve, you're up first.
So, as I mentioned before, the research into agricultural products I see as a big potential. We already have the tools here with the university and with farm ground, and it's really an issue that there's a huge amount of money going into because it's a big problem. Crops that can't grow where they used to be able to grow. So you need to modify those varieties and little test farms around here. Wouldn't have to be more than a few acres where you could plant a new variety and see how it works. That's just one example. And in addition to actually helping the farmers, it creates a new supply chain. Slightly different items are needed for that type of research. And so now we've got new businesses that could crop up or existing businesses that expand into new areas and diversify their business also.
Okay. Mike, same question, 1 minute.
Will you say that question one more time?
Sure, are there specific current strategies related to economic development that you do support?
I can't fully say that I support or stand behind any current strategies. And not to defer the subject, but it comes down to housing and staff. Even if we could diversify our economy and get other businesses or other types of production in the works, where are they going to get workers from? We can't house our current work staff numbers, let alone future and trying to plan out getting more. We need the houses to support the economy. It works hand in hand.
Okay, thank you too. We have time for one more question. This one is about public lands, of course. Grand County is surrounded by federal public land. The commission often weighs in on various federal planning efforts, travel management, creating a vision for the tailing pile, a forthcoming public lands bill. These are all examples of where this next commission could have influence. What do you see as the role of public lands in Grand County? As a commissioner, how would you support this vision within your realm of influence? Mike, you're up first.
Within our realm of influence, the commission can have many ways to influence the decision-making of our area. I do think that public lands should remain public. Public should have access to public lands. We see a lot of trail closures and a lot of outdoor recreation uses that are getting shut down in our area. I do not support closure of public lands.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, same question?
So I think what I would do is try to continue or even expand on the education of all of our users, that we have to share our public lands and we have to be respectful of not only people out on the trail, but people in town. I think that's got some potential. One program that I watch that I can't think of right now, it's produced in Salt Lake, and they talk about, it's leisure living. They talk about a lot of use of the outdoors of Utah and a lot of ATV stuff. This would be a perfect place to start some commercials about sharing the land. And one of the more exciting things, I think, is the mill tailings getting cleaned up, and what can we do with that? And I think I'd like to work on that. That just would be interesting to see what you could do over there and see what kind of things that all the valley could share and enjoy. So, that's it.
Thank you, Steve. Mike, would you like 30 seconds?
Well, thank you.
All right, you guys are very easy. We're going to go now to the closing statements. I thank you guys for participating in this discussion. This is a 1 minute each closing statement sort of deal. This is an opportunity to clarify or expand upon a point made earlier in the evening. You could also use this time to summarize your campaign and why voters should elect you to serve as the District 5 representative on the County Commission. Candidates will have 1 minute for their closing statements. Steve, we'll start with you.
So as I started out with water, this is an area I'm passionate about. So no matter what happens in November, whoever you guys vote for not just us, but for all the representatives, keep bugging them about water. Keep talking to them. Let them know that it really is an emerging issue. And the earlier we take care of it, the better plans we make. I have a pipe dream. Yes, this is going to be a pun. I have a pipe dream that if we plan our water correctly and early enough, that Mother Nature can have a seat at the table forever. But if we wait too long, she's the first one that gets booted off. So anyway, I appreciate your vote and see what happens.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Mike, closing statement.
It is important that we foster open communications to ensure the public and their voice has its part in our political decisions, as our decisions of the commission will affect everyone directly within our county. Responsibly managing our water and removing some of the roadblocks to our building process to expedite our very current housing crisis. I care deeply for this community. I've been a part of it my entire life. I can protect our collaborative legacy to work together on solutions that provide a future that include our children as well as ourselves. I'm Mike McCurdy, from here, for here.
Thank you to District 5 candidates Stephen Getz and Mike McCurdy for participating in this debate. We'll now ask our small live audience for a round of applause for these candidates. All right, you guys did really well. Thank you so much. I'll now ask the District 4 candidates, Lori McFarland and Mary McGann, to approach the podiums and get settled up there. Sarah is going to adjust your mics and help you get settled in. For those tuning in on KZMU, you're listening to the 2022 candidate debates with those running for Grant County Commission and State House District 69. This program was put together by KZMU with the support of the Southeast Utah League of Women Voters. Election day is Tuesday, November 8th. Ballots should be going out to registered voters this week. If you need to do so, you can still register to vote online at vote.utah.gov or in person at the Grand County Clerk's office. All right, we are getting the candidates running for the District 4 seat set up on the microphones. District 4 covers neighborhoods east of 400 East. There's a much better way to find out if you are in District 4, and that's by going to grandcountyutah.net and searching your address on the voter precinct map. I'll do my best to describe it, but there we go. Well, Lori and Mary, you're both up there. Thank you both for being here. Thank you so much. We're going to start off with introductions. Candidates will have 1 minute to introduce yourselves in any way you'd like. We'll start alphabetically, of course, by last name. So, Candidate McFarland, you are up first.
We're both MCs, aren't we?
My name is Lori McFarland. I'm running for the commission seat for District 4. I have a degree in international relations with a focus and emphasis on problem solving in government. After doing an internship for my congressman in Arizona congressman in Washington, D.C., I decided that I was better suited to the private sector and went to work for a startup airline where I had lots of experience managing yield management, quality control. I came to Moab 27 years ago to work on the river. I met my husband, Scott, and we started a small business and raised 2 tiny kids that graduated as Red Devils, so I guess they're locals, I'm not. We started on a shoestring budget, as I'm sure Kyle and Carrie Bailey can attest to, as they shared their nightly rentals with us whenever they had vacancies. And we now get to share the beauty on a daily basis of this county. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Lori. Mary, introduction?
Yes, I want to thank the League of Women Voters and KZMU for sponsoring this debate. I've served as Grand County Commission since 2015 and have truly enjoyed my job. As a commissioner, my priority is to safeguard the quality of life of Grand County's residents and to incorporate citizens' feedback when making decisions. I've learned that collaboration is essential to successful outcomes. Democracy works best when you have a choice. So as much as I was hoping I wouldn't have to run a campaign, I do appreciate and understand that democracy works better when people have a choice. So thank you, Lori, for your willingness to step into the ring. I am excited to serve another 4 years, and I hope you will vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you to the candidates. We're going to move on now to questions. Our questions tonight have been sourced from our nonprofit partners and the community. Just briefly, for anyone just now tuning in, timekeepers will hold up cards when candidates have 30 seconds and 10 seconds remaining. They have 2 minutes to respond to each question. When candidates have reached their time, the timekeeper will ring a bell. At that point, candidates can finish their sentence but shouldn't start a new one. And candidates, if you'd like me to repeat any question, please just say so. Each candidate will have an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal if they ask for one, and the moderator may pose a 1-minute follow-up. Again, we'll ask our small live audience to keep a respectful silence after each candidate speaks, reserving their applause for the end of this event. Candidates will answer questions in rotating order. Mary, you already know this question is going to be first. You're standing up there. Of course, housing.
Housing.
Grand County has made progress on workforce and affordable housing. But throughout this campaign season, we have heard from candidates that there are still barriers to creating housing options for locals in the county. Do you see any of these barriers, and what are their solutions, and what are the solutions that you would work on if elected?
Housing. It's been an issue in Grand County for a long time. I remember our last mate, Lori, said that when she moved from Moab, she had to live in a tent, I think it was, or a trailer. So it's been an issue for a long time. The county's been working to establish both low-income housing and attainable housing. They're very different. Low-income housing is for people who are 120% below the median, which is about earning $99,000 a year. So you have to have a fairly low income to have a low income housing. And then there's attainable housing, and attainable housing is for people that are in that other group that don't make a whole lot of money but are essential workers, such as nurses and teachers and law enforcement and people working for the BOM Forest Service and the national parks. We have the HDHO ordinance, which I'm very proud of. It was very hard to organize and develop and had a lot of hurdles to get over, but it's for attainable housing. It's for people who live in Moab and work in Moab. While Arroyo Crossing, which we jumped over the last hurdle last summer, is for affordable housing. It's for people that are low income. So those are 2 things that the county has worked very hard on. And yes, Mike, I agree with you. I wish it was so much faster. We have had so many hurdles. It's like they work hard to make it impossible for us to provide low-income housing. All the rules and regulations, if you have some type of sweat equity housing as opposed to HUD housing, is very difficult. But we have made a lot of headway, and now we're working on that type of housing for our very seasonal workers that we've discussed in the past as far as alternative dwellings.
Okay. Thank you, Mary.
Oh, I just barely got done.
Lori, you're up next. Same question.
Would you mind repeating the
Sure.
question, please?
Candidates throughout the campaign season have talked about that there are barriers to creating housing for locals in the county. Do you see any of these barriers, and what are the solutions that you would work on if elected?
What I'm hearing from the community is that housing is the #1 vehicle to rise economically. Most people don't start a small business. Most people are part of the service economy. And I believe that folks should still have the opportunity to do that. It's kind of an American dream thing. Permits for housing, for dwelling in 2021 were down 7.8% per the Department of Workforce Services, and overall construction permits were down 38%. So even after that pandemic that kicked us, we had fewer last year. Why is that? Maybe if we had regulations that were clean, consistent, and predictable, we could make a pathway that would be easier. There's a large segment of the population that is too rich to qualify for a subsidy, and they have come to me and said, Lori, you need to know, these are people that my kids went to school with, 25 to 30. I make too much money. I'm going to have to work less hours and pretend like I'm poor to be able to qualify for subsidies because I'll never get a house. I think that's not what we had planned, and I think that we can do better with that. I think that some of those federal lands that we have 96% of our lands in Grand County are either federal, state, federally owned, not 75% is federal lands, but some of those federal lands we can actually get involved in and perhaps use those as a pathway to helping some people to get housing that's respectable, sustainable, and affordable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori. Mary, would you like 30 seconds to respond?
Yes. As she mentioned, it is frustrating. I know when I was talking to Mike when we were at City Market, he said that he couldn't go into a Royal Crossing. And that's why we have the HDHO. And it's been really frustrating. We've had people challenging how we've set up the rules, and it's been postponed quite a bit. So, but we are working on having attainable housing as well as low-income housing.
Thank you, Mary. Lori, 30 seconds.
Clean, consistent, predictable. Let's let people who know how to do this and solve this build some stuff.
All right, I'm going to ask you to, the same follow-up I asked the previous candidates. This is a 1-minute follow-up for our timekeepers. Your opinion on camp parks for locals and other alternative housing. Lori, you're up first.
Well, I'm not going to lie. What I'm hearing in my neighborhood is people have concern about the integrity of their neighborhoods. And so people that have bought houses, most of them in my neighborhood, I've lived in my neighborhood for heaven's sake, 25 years. And they're saying, we love our neighborhood, but what we're finding streets, it's overspilling and overflowing. So maybe when we're looking at how we're doing this, we want to address things like a parking space for every bedroom that you have, or something that makes the integrity of the neighborhoods last. I lived in a tent, as Mary reminded me I did 27 years ago. That's not the best pathway. Let's figure out a way to make it so we can sustain our neighborhoods and have a place that's decent for folks to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Same question. Opinion on camp parks for locals and other alternative housing. 1 minute.
We have a private developer who has successfully done a camp park. And it's been really good. It's called something Roost. I'm sorry, I can't pull up the name right away. But he has successfully done that, and he makes sure that everybody that's in that park is local and that they're working for the community, and it's been very successful. We are working, and the one thing we don't want to do is to hurt neighborhoods. But I do think there's places in the county that we could have alternative units and dwellings for people so that if they're moving here and they need a time to find a house, they have a place to live. And for our river runners and our people that are seasonal, they're not going to want to buy a house, but they're going to want to have a place to park their vehicle. So I think having some alternative units is advisable.
Thank you both. We're going to move on to the next question. This next question is about noise. There are a lot of strategies to quiet down the Moab Valley put forth by local lawmakers. If elected, which ones will you be supporting moving forward? What is your strategy when it comes to noise in Grant County? Mary, this one actually goes to you first.
Oh, I thought I was second. Noise. It's a big topic. Continual exposure to excessive noise is a health issue. It can cause stress, anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, heart disease, and many other health problems. Chapter 27 of the Utah Code requires Grand County provide for the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. To not do all we can do to address the excessive noise created by UTVs and ATVs would be negligent. As well as following the Utah Code, commissioners should listen to their residents. We receive more emails concerning UTVs and ATVs than any other issue in this town. For every one email we get asking us to do nothing to mitigate the noise, that it's okay, we get 3 asking us to do something. Of those 3, 96% are locals. Of the 1/3, only 12% are locals. It is our responsibility as commissioners to listen to the people and to provide for their welfare. The commission has been accused of not listening to UTVs and ATV communities. That is not true. On April 12th of 2021, we organized a workshop with UTV businesses. We hired a facilitator from USU to run the workshop so it would be held in an unbiased manner. Now those same businesses, including my opponent's UTV, are suing the county. The lawsuit brought an end to any future collaboration between those businesses and the county. The lawsuit may be very costly to the taxpayers' money, and to fight the lawsuit, it is your money that's fighting that lawsuit. It is frustrating.
Thank you, Mary. Lori, same question.
Would you mind repeating the
Yeah,
question?
of course. There have been a lot of strategies to quiet down the Moab Valley put forth by local lawmakers. If elected, which ones will you be supporting moving forward? What is your strategy when it comes to noise in Grant County?
We all live here. We have to collaborate, not mitigate. In order to mitigate, we actually have to collaborate. I believe in solutions, not picking fights. And I believe that we need to bring all the stakeholders to the table. I believe that lowering the speed limits has made surprising inroads to helping the community. From what I'm hearing in the community, people are happy. They have more peace. They have more tranquility. That was something that the state said we weren't allowed to do. We did it anyway. It worked. Maybe. We'll find out if it worked. The industry, the side-by-side industry, brought forth House Bill 180 as an industry and led the way for education, mitigation, for any person that's going to come to our community and own or rent a side-by-side, they have to take a class in good stewardship for the land. So as an outfitter, we not only do that by volunteering to do that, but now we've committed ourselves by statute to follow that. That was our idea. Let's plan, let's make signs, let's direct people, let's teach them how to recreate properly in our community so that we can have peace. Let's don't pick fights. I think if you were to ask our county attorney, she would say that our company was at that table trying hard to help them get data, to get noise data. In every invitation we went to help make good policy, but then it broke down when the commission decided to use a cudgel and hit us with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Mary, do you want to take 30 seconds?
Yes. I agree that collaboration is really important, but now it's going to be very difficult. Well, our hands are tied. We cannot communicate. And I do agree with Lori. Her company was the most agreeable to helping and working on the noise issue. I wish they weren't suing the county at this time. I also think that it's just really important for us to realize that they've only had the ability and the right to ride on our city streets for 7 years. 7 years.
Lori, 30 seconds.
The company that my husband and I own, we're the only company to sign a very unpopular in our community petition that says, let's keep side-by-sides out of the national park. We did that by choice and took some heat for it. We are collaborators. We're part of trying to solve problems. I don't want to fight. I don't want to be in a lawsuit. But when they threatened to take my business license away if 3 customers were to get a citation, it was motivating. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a 1-minute follow-up just for Lori. As you can imagine, we did receive a few questions from community members about the recent lawsuit filed against Harry County. I'm hoping you could take this opportunity to address how you would navigate conflict of interest issues if elected.
You know what? This is uncharted water. I have never been in a lawsuit before, and I would rather not. I feel like it's important for me to stand with the community when you're getting poked. I really can't address specific issues about the lawsuit because I've been told I can't. I would love to. I'm happy to follow the counsel of attorneys that guide me, and if I need to recuse myself, I'm happy to do so.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to our next question. This is related to community fabric and collaboration. Lori, this does go to you first. Recently, a local educator told me that if kids in a community aren't healthy, no one is. They were referencing the social fabric issues that kids here in Grant County often deal with, including mental health, substance abuse, interpersonal violence, and intergenerational poverty. If elected, how would you help strengthen Grand County's response to issues that threaten our community fabric, from our youth to the elderly? We are just curious if you have a strategy to more closely collaborate with community-based organizations, the school district, board, and others. Thanks, Lori.
It's a personal issue. I believe that everybody's got something. We all struggle in one way or another. This is a very personal issue for me, and the resources that we need as a community to support one another and to do outreach are critical. Money comes from only so many places in our community. The way that we're taxed, the way that property taxes come into play. I believe that mental health issues need to be a huge priority, especially when it comes to youth. I think that the challenge is we're driving families away because the only people that can afford to live here right now are, in my age group, retired wealthy people who don't have to worry about how much the property tax is, they just pay it. I don't think that's what we want as a community. I believe we want families. We want to have that root. We want them to be our people that run for commission, reluctantly or not. I believe that what we need to do is decide as a community what our values are, not just by doing a study. Let's involve the stakeholders and invite them to the table, and let's decide what we want to be as a community and not just have a failure to plan. Let's plan who we are and become that. With mental health, I believe, is a huge priority. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mary, same question.
Would you repeat it?
Sure. If elected, how would you help strengthen Grand County's response to issues that threaten our community fabric, from the youth to the elderly? We are curious if you have a strategy to more closely collaborate with community-based organizations, the school district, on issues like mental health, substance abuse, interpersonal violence, and intergenerational poverty. It's a lot.
That is a lot. That's a whole lot. This is a subject that's been dear to my heart for a long time. I taught in Grand County for 33 years and taught overall for 40 years. In the 90s, I looked around and our town was in absolute crisis. We had 0 activities, nothing for children in this town. We didn't have a CJ Children's Justice Center. We didn't have a family support center. We didn't have a skate park. We didn't have a teen center. We didn't have the youth garden. And we didn't have foster parents. And my husband and I were foster parents. And I took a year off school to work on those issues and created a foundation called the Infant Through Youth Foundation. And through that foundation, we got the CJC, we got the children's, we got the family support center, we started the youth garden, we got the skate park, and we started the Beacon Club. And I started a fundraiser, and I thought, oh dear, I'm fundraising against all the people I've supported to get started, and so I folded up the foundation and decided to work in other ways. That's the type of energy I have, to work with people and find creative solutions. We have issues, we've always had issues, and we need to collaborate and work. I've been on many boards, from the board for the homeless. I communicate constantly with the school district. I'm working with the Multicultural Center, and I will continue to collaborate with anyone and everyone who is working on the issues that are affecting our children, our teenagers, our young adults, and our seniors. It's very important we collaborate and work together and find creative solutions.
Thank you, Mary. Lori, do you want 30 seconds on that question?
I think it's fabulous that Mary contributed those things to our community, and I applaud her for that. I think that I know how to get more out of less, and I'll do my best to just get the most bang for the buck in all those organizations, and if we can find a better way to do things, I'll do my best.
Okay, thank you too. We are closing in. We have our last question. This one goes to Mary first. Science on climate change indicates we should expect more natural disasters over time, including events like wildfire and flooding that are greater in size and density. If elected, how would you prepare residents in the county budget for these events?
Would you repeat the
Sure.
last part of that?
If elected, how would you prepare residents in the county budget for these events?
Okay, I'll address climate change to begin with. During the 2019 general session, 2 Republicans created a bill called House Bill 411. And it is to work towards net zero emissions by 2030. I'm happy to say Grand County and the city of Moab and the city of Castle Valley have all joined to be part of that climate initiative. What it means is 100% means that the amount of electricity participants use every year will be matched by the same renewable energy delivered by Rocky Mountain. So that's one thing we're doing right now for climate change. And it's exciting. There's rural communities like ours, and there's Salt Lake City, Kearns, and Ogden that are all involved in this. There's approximately 25% of the state of Utah that's participating in this program, and Grand County is one of them. We've also participated in the Blue Sky, and we have bought solar farm units. We are looking at investing in solar panels and making the airport solar efficient. We're working with the Division of Water Rights and the Grand County's USU Geological Survey to determine ways that we can protect and take care of our water, because as climate changes, we found out this summer, the clouds move slower, they hold a lot of water, and they rain. I was instrumental in writing the new job description for the emergency manager that is being recruited at this point, so that we will have an effective emergency manager in Grand County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Lori, same question? You want me to repeat it?
Thank you, yes.
Okay. Science on climate change indicates we should expect more natural disasters over time, including events like wildfire and flooding that are greater in size and density. If elected, how would you prepare residents and the county budget for these events?
Well, there are people, am I done?
No, just hold on one second.
I'll just give it a second. Sorry.
That's okay. All right. You're good, Alice? Okay.
Alice, you can cut me off.
Okay. 2 minutes. If elected, how would you prepare residents and the county budget for these events?
I believe that there are people that are better suited to help us come up with some of those emergency management situations. I am not an expert there. I do believe that we have an issue that we need to discuss and address there. I was at a climate change summit at the University of Utah on Friday, and it was so exciting to listen to and collaborate with the people that are coming together that want to solve problems together. We all have to be adults in the room. One of the biggest challenges that I have had with affiliating with the Republican Party is the stance on climate. I believe that climate is a huge issue. There was just a poll done of 823 Utahns throughout the state, and they were polled to find out what they thought was their #1 issue. And it wasn't inflation, and it wasn't gas prices, it was water use. #4 was air quality. These are issues that even in our state, in our conservative little state, people are finally getting on board and want to have sustainability, but we need it to come to the table and discuss these things in a collaborative way so that we can solve problems. I believe that there are pathways for people to come and bring that second economic engine to Grand County using a lot of those mitigation companies that are going to help us rebuild our soil, that will help us to mitigate impacts of climate. Why don't we have that as a second industry here in Moab? I believe that if we're all collaborating and at the table with new ideas and diverse ideas, we might be able to come up with some better solutions.
Thank you so much. Mary, do you want 30 seconds?
No.
Okay, we're going to move right along then to closing statements. We will take 1 minute each for these closing statements. This is an opportunity to clarify or expand upon a point made earlier in the evening. You could also use this time to summarize your campaign and why voters should elect you to serve as the District 4 representative on the County Commission. Lori, you are up. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity tonight. I believe that starting a business on a total shoestring with 2 tiny kids taught us to get more with less. There is the opportunity with greater financial planning and careful expertise that Grand County can keep our expenses down and our property taxes down and still have phenomenally good quality of life, but it takes work. A budget is not a plan. It doesn't matter if we've stayed under budget. If we fail to plan, we don't have a pathway to make the quality of life that I believe we want to have. Let's decide who we want to be, and let's have a community that thrives for families and service workers and government workers together. Thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Thank you, Lori. Mary, closing statement?
Thank you. I've been an effective commissioner, and these are some of my accomplishments. I worked with a team, and we lobbied for money, and we have found enough funding that we have shortened the time period that the tailings will be removed from the banks of the Colorado River by 10 years. I work closely with Utah legislators to create a park. Utah Raptor State Park will be created north of town, which will not only protect a valuable area and a wonderful historical site, it will also bring in tax dollars, and we're going to also have some housing for the employees there. I have worked with the federal senators and representatives to acquire veteran housing vouchers. Our veterans were not getting housing vouchers when I was first elected. They all went to Colorado. Now our veterans get housing vouchers. I've worked on many things and been very effective, and I love my job, and please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you both to District 4 candidates Lori McFarland and Mary McGann for participating in this. Thank you all so much. It's not easy to stand up there and answer questions. We have one more commission debate before we take a brief break. I will ask at-large candidates Emily Campbell and Bill Winfield to approach the podiums and get settled up there. We're going to get your mics situated. You're tuned into the 2022 candidate debates with those running for Grand County Commission and State House District 69. This program was put together by KZMU with support from the Southeast Utah League of Women Voters. Election day is Tuesday, November 8th. Ballots should be going out to registered voters this week. If you need to do so, you can still register to vote online at vote.utah.gov or in person at the Grand County Clerk's Office. The two candidates before us running for an at-large seat on the Grand County Commission are just getting their mics on. At-large is great because I do not have to attempt to describe the district boundaries in this race. If you are registered to vote in Grand County, you will be able to vote for one of these candidates. Emily and Bill, thank you so much for being here. We're going to start off right off the bat with introductions. Candidates will have 1 minute to introduce themselves in any way they'd like. As we've been doing, we're starting alphabetically by last name. So candidate Campbell, you are up first.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much to KZMU and the League of Women Voters for making this space tonight. And thank you for all of you who are here to listen or listening on the radio. I'm Emily Campbell, and I'm running for County Commission for the same reason I stepped up to volunteer for the Planning Commission 6 years ago. I look at how fast things are changing around town, and it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is, how long you've been here, everyone's feeling the pain. We're feeling the pain as it tears against our community fabric. We're feeling it in the pain of our housing market, and in our difficulty of feeling a sense of home. So I stepped up to bring my skills and my relationships and experience to Grand County, and that's why I'm running. I have a background in economics. I worked in economics for several years in economic development, focusing on things like looking at housing markets and how we can adjust them through incentives to make them work a little bit better for the folks on the ground. I want to bring that type of thinking here. I'm an ideas-oriented person, an outcome-oriented person, and that is the thing that's most important to me. Finding common ground, focusing on the problems, and working together to solve them.
Thank you so much, Emily. Bill, opening statement.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you, both KZMU and all of you, for attending and taking an interest in our local political scene. We all want and care for Grand County and the beauty that surrounds it. My name is Bill Winfield. My connection to Grand County runs very deep. I grew up here, then wandered around the country for a while before deciding to return and settle back into my roots. This race is about experience, trust, and bringing a new voice to Grand County while listening to all of you, the citizens. Like many of the elections around our country, there is more than enough rhetoric and rumors swirling around this commission seat. Locals I have talked to within the community, myself included, are tired of the divisiveness and the alienation that takes place on a regular basis by our local leaders. It's time to listen to the community, their concerns, and start coming up with solutions to our local problems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, candidates. We're moving on to questions. I'm going to run through these time-cleaving rules very quickly. You'll have 2 minutes to respond. You'll have an option for a 30-second rebuttal, and the moderator may pose a 1-minute follow-up question. And if you'd like me to repeat any questions, please just say so. Once more, thank you to the audience for keeping a respectful silence after each candidate speaks and reserving your applause until the end of the event. Candidates will answer in rotating order. This question goes to Bill first. Okay, so like I said earlier in this evening, there's a certain anxiety among the business community that our tourism economy is not being prioritized at the county level. Do you agree? What should be prioritized when it comes to our local economy? And what current or future strategies related to economic development would you support if elected?
Well, I definitely agree that it doesn't feel like the community's being heard. The business community has been struggling of recent, and they've mentioned more than once around town that there's been a decline, even followed up by our strategic development director predicting a recession for Moab. We have to maintain our current economy moving forward as we branch out in other areas of diversification. We must continue to support all of our local businesses moving forward. And we need to invest in other light industries such as we currently have, even in Synergy and a few other locals. Enticing other industries to move into our area will require some tax rebates possibly or incentives. We have got to start looking elsewhere. USU currently has both degrees and vocational opportunities for our community, and we need to continue building on this investment. In order for USU to be able to expand, it is going to require housing. As we diversify our economy, we need to look into other options for keeping up with other parts of the state, even in the solar energy fields. With our current president's plan to complete an alternative, to have us completely on alternative energy by 2050, we have some catching up to do. Why aren't we leading in solar? With Moab and Grand County having an abundance of sunshine, why aren't we making our own power? I do know that Mary mentioned putting the airport on solar, but what's wrong with the city building, the county building, the schools, this building? Why are we not moving towards solar on all of our buildings?
Thank you, Bill. Emily, same question.
So my background is in economic development, and one of the tenets of building healthy economies is you build from what exists. And I think that we have the ability to do that. When I look at the tourism economy, I see so many small businesses that are owned by people who came here as guides, who got their start coming here to enjoy our amazing area, our lands, and decided to stay. And I think we need to make it easier for them to stay in business and to keep that engine churning. So where we do spend our TRT dollars directly into the community, I think we focus on small businesses and the opportunity to mitigate the cost of doing business in any economy, not just Grand County to date. Now, I've talked about a lot of ideas to increase the diversification of our community. One of the things I think we can do is work with the university, and I was so glad to see that the STAR Economic Grant, which I helped to build the application for as part of the Economic Development Advisory Committee, is announcing their winners tomorrow at the County Commission meeting. Some of those winners include small businesses, people in sustainable farming, people using the money to build employee housing so they can expand, creating new jobs, bringing STEM education into our schools, and actually developing vocational programs to keep young people here and build from what exists. I've started doing that work in my volunteer capacity, and with a voice and a vote on the Grand County Commission, I can bring my expertise to the table to be more effective. Now, I've also mentioned at the last debate, I think that there are some sleepers in our community that we also can invest in. The film industry, we've all had a lot of fun seeing our resident movie stars moving around town, but they've also brought millions of dollars of economic stimulus over the years to our community with a very low impact on our neighborhoods and creating fun opportunities for our residents to get involved in the economy and share in that benefit. And I think that that's something that we should continue to invest in as well. I see a lot of opportunity to grow, and I'd like to use my experience in economics, my knowledge of the community, to invest in what works.
Thank you, Emily. Bill, would you like to take 30 seconds?
I agree that we need to build on experience. And that's what we need here, is somebody who has experience, who's worked in this community, and hasn't been involved in the past 6 years of government, where we really see very little progress coming out of them. It's time that we started putting something together that works and that is more than just talk. Thank you.
Emily, 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I want to take a moment to address this because it's come up already in the intro as well. I'm not in government, I'm a volunteer. I volunteer my time and my skills, and I'm glad to do so. And the things I have been involved with have created some successful starts for the county. I mentioned the STAR grant. I've brought my experience to the table and helped us build a more effective application for the grants that are allowing us to diversify our economy. I've brought ideas to the table, and I brought my facilitation skills to help people come together. But I'm not a career politician. This is my first time running for office, and I'm just looking forward to the opportunity to serve.
Okay, great. Thank you to you both. This next question is about water. Emily, you are first. The Grand County Commission is not a water service provider, but the county's elected officials can play a role in our water resources. New growth in the valley will be happening in Grand County. If elected, you could be helping a number of things: creating a water source protection plan, organizing new monitoring wells, and making land use planning decisions based on new water studies. What is your strategy when it comes to water in Grand County? What water-wise planning initiatives would you like to move forward?
So we've really seen this year how water shapes our community, not just in terms of knowing what we can pull from the ground to support housing and our local economy, but also seeing the ways that water affects our neighborhoods and being mindful about how our infrastructure keeps us safe and our neighborhoods sound. Now, I do think it's so important to be working with our partners at GWSSA, with the city, with other intergovernmental agencies to be wise about building policies that work for the future. Now, in terms of water-wise policy, there are a number of ideas that I've seen come to the table. They include things like looking at water-wise planning requirements and use requirements for large-scale developments, and even considering using those as a baseline. Perhaps there's an opportunity to offer the easement of some of those as an incentive, killing two birds with one stone. I've also seen the idea brought forward that perhaps we need to have a water budget for large-scale developments, and certainly I think it's something we need to be talking about anytime that we look at a new development in the county. The more that we can do to quantify what exists, the smarter we can be. Now, the problem we have today is that there's so much uncertainty about what exists, and so it's difficult to make decisions, planning for the future when there's difficult trade-offs. Building more housing comes at the cost of potentially hardening our water sources. And that's why where we do build, I think we need to be focusing on locals first. I support housing policies that support local housing over housing policies that don't put locals first. That way, if we do find ourselves in a position where we do have to turn the spigot, we've made sure that we've taken care of our own. And there's actually a law on the state books that requires once you hit that sustainable yield, you cannot build anymore. Now, that's a difference between Bill and myself that we'll talk about, I'm sure. I want to focus on local housing, and I am willing to require that we make sure we take care of our locals where we build. That's something I think allows us to build sustainably into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Bill, same question?
Yeah, could you run that one by me again, please?
Sure. What is your strategy when it comes to water in Grand County? If elected, you could be helping to create a water source protection plan, organizing new monitoring wells, making land use planning decisions based on new water studies. What water-wise planning initiatives would you like to move forward?
Well, I think the first and the most important one is the one you mentioned is well monitoring. Currently, I believe that other than using existing wells that people and ranchers have in this valley, there is no monitoring wells that are dedicated to our aquifer alone. We currently rely on data that comes from some of these wells, and it's not very accurate. And I believe it's time that we started looking for somewhere to find the money to put this together. So well monitoring is important. We live in a community that gets an average of about 9 inches a year, although this year's been a little different than that. And we've got to start working also towards capturing some of that excess watershed and putting it into storage. There's options to do that out in the valley, and I think that's somewhere that we need to be looking, whether that's shared with the San Juan Valley or Grand Water and Sewer does it stand alone. Definitely we need to be working towards reducing our outdoor water usage. Many of the houses in this community that are currently under construction are now working towards a more environmental friendly landscaping, and that's something we do ourselves in the construction company I own. It's just part of a natural sequence of living in a desert that we need to move that direction. Water conservation is a very serious issue, and we need to continue incentivizing new home construction to better landscape use in this desert. I've been involved in the infrastructure projects over the last 4 decades, many of them here as well as in other places, and that experience is what's needed right now to get us through an aging infrastructure that we have here in Grand County and Moab.
Thank you. Emily, do you want 30 seconds?
Yes, so actually over the last several months, we've had the opportunity to hear from Mark Stilson, who's a water engineer. We do actually have water well monitoring. The problem is we don't have visibility into our private wells. And the more we work with the community to get visibility into what we currently don't see, the better off we'll be able to support our residents today. And I believe that the number of wells recently expanded up to near 20. So that is something we have the data on, but we need to be smart about how we use it and make sure that we are talking about it frequently and regularly as a trade-off to things like larger scale development and other options.
Thank you. Bill, would you like 30 seconds?
Sure. I too have met with Mark Stilson, I believe 3 times in the past 2 months, and there are no dedicated monitoring wells for Grand County in this aquifer that we're living off of. I do know that they use the well on Jennifer Spears' property out in the valley as one of them. So it is an area that we need to work on. It's an area that we're going to have to start looking into if we want to really make accurate estimates and guesstimates on what there is for water out there.
Thank you to you both. We are moving on to another question. This one goes to Bill first. Housing. All candidates get this question on housing. So Grant County has made progress on workforce and affordable housing, but throughout the campaign season, we have heard from candidates that there are still barriers to creating housing for locals in the county. Do you see any of these barriers, and what are the solutions you would work on if elected?
Our current administration has been slow to allow additional inventory in our housing supply. While they continue to talk about a pipeline of housing, many wonder where the pipeline is. My plan would be to incentivize local builders with significant tax rebates if we want to go towards affordable housing. Attainable housing, we need to start looking at ways to get out of the builder's way and stop penalizing them with additional requirements and start incentivizing them to help with this housing problem we have. We have places that we can rezone in areas that make sense to increase our density, such as the small lot residential zones. We've got to start using those. When we talk about housing, in the past 6 years, I've helped bring approximately 40 homes into the local market for local workforce community members, some of who in this room are living in those homes. We have an unacceptable housing crisis in Grand County. This not only makes it hard on our local workforce, but many seniors and first-time home buyers simply cannot afford to buy homes here now. We lack a plan currently with our local leaders. Currently, the mentality is to redistrict or penalize home builders when we should be incentivizing them. Clearly, the path we are on is not working, and to continue with electing officials from the same pool of thought will change nothing. My lifetime of working in housing and infrastructure leave me being the one with the experience to help this county through some of these struggles. Stick-built ADUs, tiny homes, there's all kinds of options available to continue with housing here.
Thank you. Emily, same question.
Would you mind repeating that?
Sure. Throughout the campaign season, we have heard that from candidates that there are still barriers to creating housing options for locals in the county. Do you see any of these barriers? What are the solutions you would work on if elected?
Yes, this is a great question. I actually have been spending a lot of time talking with local builders to understand the things that stand in their way. Many of those issues are administrative. That's one of the things that we can do right off the bat. I think that when people are building housing for locals, we should fast track the administrative process. When people are building housing for locals, we should consider waiving fees, certainly reducing fees and making it easier. When people are building housing for locals, we should do everything we can to allow that to happen where it makes sense and in a way that respects our existing neighborhoods, which is always going to be a trade-off. But that is the key difference. We have seen what happens when people build without caring about who's going to be living in those homes. We need to make sure that we have housing for our residents, for the people in our workforce, for our retirees, for the people whose kids go to school here. And I think we can do more to make that easier for the folks doing that. But I will stand here and say, I don't think that that is a burdensome requirement when we are going to the ends we can to make that easier, and we should. Now, in terms of some of the things that I have helped in my volunteer capacity, I supported the Assured Housing Program. If a new large hotel comes to town, they will be required to put some amount of money and units aside for workforce housing. I supported the HDHO and helped to write it. Now, there are challenges, there are problems with that. We need to go back and say, hey, if something's not working exactly as planned, let's revisit it. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But there are things we can do, and I've talked to some of those builders about creative things they are excited about to come to the table and figure out how to make that work better. And I know that this question around the ADO, the alternative dwelling ordinance, will come up, maybe, but I support that. People live in different types of housing. We need to not let perfect get in the way of good. Let's make sure that people have stable, dignified options. Let's make sure that we have options that scale, and let's do more to make it easier to be wise building housing for locals into the future.
Thank you. Bill, would you like 30 seconds?
Sure. When we talk about the HDHO, I was the first applicant for an HDHO housing unit in this town. It was a moving target from day one. I didn't even get involved in the lawsuit, but it was a mess from day one. It has not worked well for any developer, and most of them are just trying to get through and be done with it. We can also talk about Colin Fryer and the 12 units he put out on the Call property. He tried to increase that to 24 and was discouraged from doing so.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Emily, 30 seconds.
I think the Call property's in the city. So as far as HDO goes, we should acknowledge when things don't work out perfectly. That is part of the cycle of learning and making things better, and that's what we're talking about today. We shouldn't be afraid to look at things critically and say, how could we improve this? But I've had a chance to talk to many of those builders. Where they are falling down is on administrative barriers that are resolvable, and I am willing and ready to come to the table and be creative. Let's resolve those problems. Let's not throw it out just because it worked, but it didn't work as well as we thought it could the first time.
Okay. Thank you so much. My tired follow-up is coming now. This is a 1-minute follow-up for both candidates. Your opinions on camp parks for locals and other alternative housing.
So let me take a moment and quickly explain what the ADO ordinance does. It's written to be an overlay, so anybody who wants to build that type of development is required to go through 2 public hearings and to meet very specific standards that would not turn this into something that just pops up in every backyard. It will not. But what it does do is it offers an alternative to what is currently happening illegally. It gives us a path to increase enforcement in a humane way. And it gives us the ability to get housing faster. We need to focus on solutions that work with the urgency that the problems deserve to be given. And this is one that may be a short-term remedy, but it is something we need. We need to make sure that our workforce, our essential workers, and our families have stable, dignified housing. Now, I've met many of the people who live in the neighborhood that Mary spoke to earlier. They're amazing people. They're so glad to have an option for them and their families. They're glad to have safe and stable housing. That should be something we focus on while we work on the longer term and the larger solutions.
Thank you, Emily. Same question, Bill, your opinion on camp parks for locals and other alternative housing. This is a follow-up, so you have 1 minute.
I believe that it hasn't been thought through enough yet. I wouldn't say that I'm against it, but I would say that there are many locals who are. There needs to be somewhere for these people to go and places for them to stay. And it's amazing that we haven't come up with something yet that works for them. The camp park that was mentioned earlier by an individual here in town, I believe is a great idea, and I think more of them should be allowed for that. I don't believe that it's a good idea moving them into neighborhoods where people are against it. And I'm aware that the Call property is in the city. Currently Colin has property also out in the county that he's given up on because of the red tape that she discusses that we need to remove from the process when many of those people are present here and part of that process, and I don't quite see how she's going to be the one to remove it.
Okay. Thank
I'll
you.
still do a rebuttal on that.
Can I do rebuttal then follows, but you can save it for your closing statement. We're going to move on to our next question, which is related to our legislature. Bill, you are up first. Grand County commissioners often lobby state and federal policymakers, especially during legislative sessions. If elected, which issues would you like to engage state or federal lawmakers on and why? And how would you work to build those relationships to help solve these problems here in Grand County?
I believe that working on those relationships has to start soon based off of some of the problems that we've had here in the past, more specifically wrapped around the noise situation. It was very evident that our local leaders were not listening to what the state was telling them, and instead to the point that they were ridiculing them. Eventually that came out and the state came down here and got involved, and I think that's putting the cart before the horse. We've got to work with those people. They make the laws. They determine what we're going to do next. And then we have to fall into those guidelines. There's many things that the state does do that's come about and that has helped us here. In the last general session, they made the HB 82 a bill that allowed us to build accessory dwellings here in town when many of our local leaders were opposed to them. So developing some kind of a standard that allows us to communicate on an experienced and on a personal and on a level that doesn't insult them would be a good place to start. We can't continue to advertise and to run off at the mouth, so to speak, about our state leaders when we're also trying to bridge gaps and to build a relationship with them. That's where I would go with it.
Thank you, Bill. Emily, same question.
So first I'll just say how great it is to have the opportunity to have a debate for two people who are running for the State House here in our town. And I think the more opportunities we can have to invite that conversation into our community, the better served we are to build relationships and to bring awareness of our local issues back up to Salt Lake and to the respective communities where these folks live. You know, a lot of the issues that we're experiencing, others are experiencing too. Maybe on a slightly delayed status, but issues like housing, the way that short-term rentals have affected our neighborhood, noise. These are all things that are affecting other neighborhoods across the state. Now, in terms of the things that I would specifically want to work with the state on, I think working with the state to get local control over this issue of UTVs on our streets is a positive choice, both for the state legislature and for local businesses and locals living here. The more that we can work together to find strategies and trade-offs that allow us to protect the interests of our local outfitters and businesses, but also our residents, the better served we all are. Not having those options as cards that we can use to work together leaves us with very, very little choice, and that's part of the reason we found ourselves in this situation that we're in today. I'd love to work on finding a way to bring that control back locally. Now, another thing that I'd love to bring with state legislatures is the way that SITLA apportions development across areas like ours. Now, what happened when SITLA was first, well, it wasn't SITLA when it was formed, but when the state formed, there were all these little check-it-box parcels scattered across the state. But today, we have these giant masses of SITLA properties that have come about through land swaps that now exist largely here in Grand County and around Washington County. We are facing the huge impact of carrying the load of any future development, and I think our voice is better served to be an equal and a partner to figuring out how we can work through that land use together. I'd really like that to be a conversation that we invest in as we build relationships with the State House.
Thank you, Emily. Bill, do you want 30 seconds?
Sure. I think that's a good idea to start building those relationships at the state level. I think that for too long they've been doing just the opposite with our local leaders here. It's hard to ridicule and tear people down and then expect them to put an ear to what it is that you want to do locally. And if we don't start respecting them, there's never going to be any respect for us here either.
Emily?
So I agree. I don't think we should ridicule people we want to bring in as partners. I was recently looking at an article in the TI from 2015 when I attended a public meeting with our state representative. I remember being invited to a brunch sitting next to Governor Cox, or Lieutenant Governor Cox, with my baby on my chest, talking to him about the challenges we face here. I find that these folks are fairly accessible if we give them the opportunity. Sometimes we need to seek them out, but I want to. I want to build those relationships. I think the more that we are outgoing, informing them, the better served we are locally.
Okay. Thank you, too. We are going to move on to another question. This one goes to Emily first. It's about the budget. One of the primary responsibilities of the County Commission is to pass a balanced budget. It's also where our local government lays out their priorities. What are your priorities with the county budget and where we spend our money? If there's anything that you would want changed in any recent budgets, please tell us how you would balance the budget after making those changes.
So the first thing I'll say, if you're listening, is that meetings are happening right now to review the budget for next year. And I've enjoyed listening in. They're very transparent. You have a chance to have a vote or a voice. So lean in, get involved. It's on YouTube for the past meetings. So I had an opportunity to sit in on the Economic Development Advisory Board budget strategizing session. I'm a volunteer member of that board. And the thing that I was pushing in that meeting is we need to be outcome-oriented. And that comes from my experience as an economist and as a leader. When I say to my teams, what are you doing? I don't want to know activities. I want to know outcomes. What are the metrics you're using to measuring success? What can we look at next year to say, is this working? Do we need to reassess or readjust? It allows us to objectively hold our leaders accountable, and it gives us transparency into the thinking behind the initiatives that the county officers and departments are bringing into the budget. And I think we should work very hard to get visibility into that. And that's something that I would focus on. Now, in terms of anything I would directly leave out of the budget, I don't have a strong opinion. I've been watching the meetings as they go. I see a lot of challenging of those line items, and if I see something I have an issue with, I'll raise it. But the thing that I will be hitting on in the early parts of next year, regardless of the outcome of this election, is so what? We now have this budget. What will we see a quarter from now? What will we see half a year from now? How are we going to know if it's working? I'd like us to have an insert that we can put in the papers with each department saying, here are my key metrics for the year. These are the initiatives that I think are going to help to get that over the line. And here are the line items in the budget that get me there. That type of thinking is objective, it's quantitative, it's fiscally responsible, and it's achievable without a lot of lift and without a lot of burden. The more visibility we have in accessible ways, the more accessible the process is, and the more accountability we can have to use our money wisely.
Thank you, Emily. Bill, same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Budget. What are your priorities with the county budget and where we spend our money? If there are any line items in any of the county's recent budgets that you would have changed, please tell us how you would balance the budget after making those changes.
I think there's plenty of room to work in that budget. I do know that the county's done a fairly good job of balancing it to date. We need to be very careful moving forward as we continue to see somewhat of a tourism drop, because the drop reduces also the TRT tax that we collect and other taxes in this community as well. So we've got to plan for the future, as she said as well. We need to be looking through this a quarter at a time. We need to constantly be looking in that budget for places where we can be eliminating waste and redundancy in the county. Redundancy between the county and the city as well. We need to be in control of the budget and also secure revenue sources with tourism. We can't rely on strictly tourism to continue to carry this county, and we've got to start looking other places. And part of that's going to have to come from the budget by incentivizing other industries to come into this town. Light industries, obviously, we don't have access to a train. We can't bring in major industries. Our strategic development director has made it clear that there will be budget cuts across the board, and he's mentioned that there's an imminent recession coming for Grand County. Now, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we can get through some of this. Hopefully we do a little better job of spending our TRT taxes and doing some advertising, but the budget is wrapped around all of that. And visibility, I agree, getting it in the paper, it's so complicated right now, it would take more than a simple page in the paper to clear up that budget and make it transparent for the locals.
Thank you. Emily, do you want 30 seconds?
Sure. So some of the other things that we could be doing to make our budget more sustainable. Number one, I'm so glad to see that the STAR grants are going towards helping local businesses diversify. Things like getting access to e-commerce site and support like that through grants and through the university help people expand their operations and bring tax revenue back into our economy. I think we also should look at creatively investing in commercial along 191 to the south. That allows us to keep tax revenue local instead of sending it south to San Juan as it develops. So balancing the budget, which we must do by state statute, isn't just about controlling what goes out, but also expanding what comes in.
Thank you. Bill, would you like 30 seconds?
Sure. I agree that those grants that came out of the TRT were a good idea, especially the ones around the flood. There were many people and businesses both in this community that were hit hard and affected by the storm that went through Moab. Not just a storm, multiple. We've had enough storms here to go around, I think. The part of the budget that we need to be looking at is the grants that are handed out that shouldn't be. And I just bring up one of them and talk about reclusing yourself, but we were given a grant out to one of our local commissioners. I don't think that that's a good choice of ethics in our local government.
Okay, thank you. We probably don't have time for one more question, but I do want to ask it because you are the at-large candidate, so I want to give you an extra question since all of Grand County's voters will be making a decision in this election. This is, of course, related to noise. There are lots of strategies to quiet down the Moab Valley put forth by local lawmakers. If elected, which ones will you be supporting moving forward? What is your strategy when it comes to noise in Grand County? Bill, this goes to you first.
Noise in Grand County is the biggest issue that I hear about when I go door to door. It's been sidetracked a little bit lately with the outside influences that continue to bother us here, but really noise is what's driving this community crazy. I will say that several things that we have done that have moved this forward for us has been the reduced speed limit. Although it's caused some problems for people, especially out in the valley, to be able to follow coming in behind those razors at 15 miles an hour has frustrated some. But I can speak for myself, living right out here on this street, just up the road, that the speed limit has helped immensely. If we're going to continue to alienate the businesses and the people that recreate here, the noise problem is not going to go away. It really comes down to collaboration and working with these people rather than forcing them into a lawsuit when they see that's the only avenue as somebody goes after their businesses. So again, we're going to have to enlarge the trailheads. We need to start working towards removing the UTVs and the side-by-sides. And there's only one way to do that, and that's to trailer them out of this community. Eventually, I see that we can get them out of here, but it's not an overnight. We're not going to run them out tonight or tomorrow. So larger trailheads, working with our local BLM and other people to find ways to make that happen so that we can go to a trailering community somewhat and mitigate all of the noise and the issues here in town. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Emily, same question.
Sure, so I already kind of alluded to this meeting I went to back in 2015. I was excited to find this article on. And Google it if you Google my name and 2015 UTVs, you'll find it. There was a number of local representatives there, and my opinion hasn't changed much. What I offered at the time was, I think we need to have reduced speed limits. I think we need to advocate for nighttime curfews in our neighborhood zones. And I think we need to recognize our outfitters are the ones who want to be our partners, but one of the largest challenges we have is that many visitors come here and don't even realize the impact that they're having. So I want to make sure we are investing in education. The Moab brand should be one of, this is our home. We treat it with respect, but we're glad you're here. I think that gives us the ability to work with our business community as partners while we're also mitigating the issue in our neighborhoods. But it is something that I've heard from people from all walks of life. It's the most unifying issue in Grand County. I was talking to a gentleman just yesterday. He said, I own a UTV, and I don't think they belong on our streets. I was talking to members of Red Rock Four-Wheelers who said, listen, we love getting out in the backcountry, but we don't think UTVs belong on our streets. And that is a reality that we need to recognize. Now, my family's a boating family. We need to trailer our boat. It doesn't swim down Main Street. But we have the ability to bring ourselves to the places where we recreate without impacting neighborhoods. Almost every other type of use uses that option. So I do think that it is the right way of thinking about this in the long run. But I also mentioned I want to work with our legislatures to bring more control locally on this issue. The more we have the ability to look at the trade-offs and work together, the more likely it is we can find a solution that works for everyone. By not having local control over this issue, when the legislature took the ability of us away to create spaces around our neighborhoods and our schools and our hospital, it just makes it so much harder for us to work together locally. And I think that that's something we should work with the legislature to bring local control back and allow us to find solutions that work here in Grand County.
Thank you, Emily. Bill, would you like 30 seconds?
Sure.
Okay.
Again, I agree that we need to be working with our state legislatures. We do need to be bringing control into this valley, and by doing that means that we work with them. We don't ridicule them. The same goes for the local business owners. We have to have them at the table. We heard Lori say that she started the education program. She was a part of that. We have got to work and collaborate with all sides of this issue. That means the people that drive them, the people that own them, the people that rent them, and those of us that don't, just don't want the noise in our neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. Emily, 30 seconds.
So I absolutely do think we need to work with our outfitters, but we also need to make sure that we're listening to the people who live here. We have lost people from this community because of the noise. We have kids and families who are affected by this noise in their homes, in their backyards. And I think we need to speak openly and honestly about that impact to our quality of life. Growth has affected all of us. It has compounded at a massively increasing scale. We are in a different world than we were 10 years ago. Our solutions need to catch up.
Thank you, candidates, for this discussion tonight. We will now take 1 minute each for closing statements. Emily is up first. This is an opportunity to clarify or expand upon a point made earlier in the evening. You could also use this time to summarize your campaign and why voters should elect you to serve as their at-large representative on the county commission. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to take half a second and advocate for getting educated on the alternative dwelling overlay. Reach out to me. This would not put RVs in every neighborhood in Grand County. We need to create dignified housing options for everyone in our community. This is an important part of the solution. And that's an example of the type of thinking that I bring to the table. We need to have people who come with ideas. When we started that process, we didn't have that exact outcome in mind. We started with the problem. We've got people camping in our parks. We've got people camping in our neighborhoods. We have people working for our businesses who don't have a place to live. Let's bring folks to the table. Let's talk about all the ways we might approach this, and let's figure out what works. That's the type of thinking we need here. It's objective. It's nonpartisan. It's about working together to find solutions to the collective challenges that we are all carrying. I have kids in the school. Got my roots here. My husband and I just celebrated 10 years married. I want to make sure we're solving our issues today and not kicking the can down the road. And that is the thing that I am committed to and why I'm hoping to serve.
Thank you, Emily. Phil, closing statement?
I believe part of the problem was created by the local elected officials. We can't keep kicking that can down the road, I agree. My motivation for running for county commission has been to be a voice for the people, as well as a voice against outside interests impacting our local community and leaders. I am invested in this community, both with long-term business ownership and financially investing in lives and friendships. I put far more value in my friends than I do in my financial investments. It is time to replace the outside influences in our communities with locals who want to truly diversify and want diversity and inclusion. I am focused on creating a stable economy in Grand County that provides not only entry-level jobs, but professional careers for our children and many others that come here, both for an education and just to visit and end up staying. We can and must protect the opportunities that many people come here for. Thank you.
Thank you to at-large candidates Emily Campbell and Will Linfield for participating in this debate. We can have a round of applause for Thank you so much. You are listening to the 2022 candidate debates with those running for County Commission and State House District 69. Please stay tuned. We will be back just after 6 p.m. with House District 69 candidates Phil Hyman and Tyler